Hello and welcome to another video from Flash Jazz Cat, and in this video we've got yet another Atari 1200XL, but this one is a little bit different. Again, it's here to have some upgrades installed, but it's also unfortunately arrived with the owner. It didn't sustain this damage coming to me, it sustained this damage here on its trip to the owner when he purchased the machine. I can't remember offhand where he got it from. It might have come from America actually. More than likely it did, because there's simply none on sale here at the moment. But as you can see, two of the key stems under the keycaps have been completely destroyed in transit. But I've got the keycaps here with the broken plungers or whatever they're called embedded in the bottom, and the springs as well. But as luck would have it, I've actually got a donor 1200XL keyboard from which I can cannibalise. So we can fix the keyboard for a start. I can't remember offhand whether the Mylar will also need the preemptive fix that they usually need, or whether it's already had a replacement Mylar fitted. Not too sure about that. But other than that, the machine's in pretty nice shape. Not discoloured in any way, shape or form. Looks pretty good. Little mark on the front here, which we can probably get rid of. Keyboard feels fine apart from that. The trim along the top here is absolutely almost perfect. There's a little dent there. That's not a dent, it's a mark. Very rare to see the aluminium trim in such good condition, in my experience. I don't think I've got three 1200XLs. I don't think any of them are completely free of defects. The perspex is a little bit dirty. Well, it's a bit scuffed up actually, but we can fix that. We can fix the, there we go, if you have a look there. We can fix these scuffs, no problem. I've got some plastic polish, so we can buff all of those little scratches out of the perspex, no problem at all. I think the top could just do with a little wipe down. We'll just put a damp cloth over that and that should look pretty good. I'm still a little bit hoarse from this cold. I must apologise from that. It's one of those colds. It's been 3 weeks to the days pretty much since it came on, and after about 7 days I thought, oh, I'm throwing it off now. But it lingers, it lingers. So here's a shot of the label on the bottom of the machine for all you serial aficionados. And as ever, let's run through what we're going to actually put in the machine. But first, a message from our sponsor, PCBWay. Now, PCBWay have over 11 years of experience in the field of PCB prototyping and assembly, and they offer other services like CNC machining and even 3D printing. And at the moment, they're running a competition, the PCBWay 8th Project Design Contest, with some quite tantalising prizes on offer, including $1,500, a $200 coupon, and an NVIDIA Jetson Orin Nano Super 8GB developer kit, second prize of $1,000 and a third prize of $500, plus other stuff as well. And you've still got a couple of months to submit your project. So if you need a prototype PCB, PCB assembly, or any of the other services on offer, pop down to PCBWay today. This channel is just turning into a upgrading computers channel now. I very rarely get anything to fix. I've got a 5200 actually, Atari 5200 console that belongs to Jakob of Retro Lemon, which I'm trying to fix. I'm making very, very heavy with it, I have to say. We didn't even have any spare RAM to put in it, so we're going to try that first. But anyway, that's beside the point. So we've got the VBXE. That's going on the machine. So obviously we're going to go for the DIN 13 connector in place of the RF modulator. This is a bit different from the previous 1200XL I featured on the channel a couple of months ago, because this one's going to be converted to PAL as well. For those of you who don't know, no 1200XL was ever produced in a PAL configuration. So we're going to use these parts here to convert, in conjunction with the VBXE, which has a jumper on the bottom here, from which you can select PAL or NTS. I'm going to move that now actually, because I'll probably forget. Or NTSC master clock crystals. So we've selected the NTSC one, so that's going to drive the master clock and our buffered O2 clock signal. And this crystal here, which isn't present on the 1200XL at all, because as you may know, NTSC machines do not require a separate oscillator to drive the PAL color burst signal. So we've got this little board here which comes from Jurgen van Redek, TFHH there, and this is quite new. It's 10th month 2024 as far as I can see there, and this is a PAL injector for the GTIA chip. And what we'll do here is we'll put this PAL GTIA in this adapter and use that combo to replace the NTSC GTIA chip in the 1200XL, and that will give us the proper colour signal coming out of GTIA. So this basically is a discrete implementation of all the circuitry that you would find normally on all the other 8-bit Ataris, whether populated or not populated on an NTSC machine, populated on a PAL machine. So that's what that does. There's been a few different people who made these things. Lenore DropCheck used to make them, but she stopped doing it for whatever reason. Can't remember why. And I think Passu made one at one point, and he stopped making them for whatever reason. Can't remember why. Another option is to put a Sophia. If you happen to be putting a Sophia in the computer, that will automatically sense the master clock frequency and will produce the proper PAL color burst frequency just based on those external factors. So you don't need to bother with any of this. If you've got a Sophia in the board, you can do a PAL conversion on a computer very easily. So we've got GTIA, we've got PAL Antic as well, which is necessary to do a proper conversion to PAL. So at the end of the process, we'll have taken out of the machine, in fact, because we've got PokeyMAX as well, so we'll have 3 VLSIs removed from the machine that the owner can keep as spares, or he can use them, or he can sell them if he wants. We'll have a Pokey chip and an NTSC GTI and an NTSC Antic removed from the machine as spare chips. So here's the aforementioned Pokey. This is a PokeyMAX 4, same as the one I installed, I think, on the previous video, a recent video. So I know what I'm doing with this now, so it shouldn't take very long to get this all wired up, much the same way as we did on the 600XL, featured in another video. What else have you got here? Oh, you've got a UAV as well. So this is going to take that video signal from the PAL GTI in the PAL converter board, and it's going to generate a nice composite NES video signal. The reason this has got no headers attached to it is that I suggested to the customer, as I usually do, that they just buy the kit or the basic board. I don't like the terminal block that is on these things when you buy them completely wired up. In fact, I'll hard jumper these jumper array here with little bits of wire, because I haven't got the small 2mm pitch strips or jumpers, but I'll just hard wire them with little bits of wire. It's a lot more compact anyway, keeps the height of the board down. So that's UAV, so that's going to go in as well. And of course, last but not least, we've got a purple Ultimate 1MB, and these have so far, I think it was the middle of this year until I actually saw one of these things, although they'd been announced about a year prior to that. But I've had a few of them through my hands now. No problems at all, I like them. Low profile because the battery's on the top. I've yet to run into or hear of any stability issues. So, but I have heard of some lingering problems with PLCC flash ROMs on prior batches. So the older black-coloured PCBs, including the ones that were slightly revised prior to this revision, quite a few of them had dodgy PLCC flash ROMs in them. It was only the other week I heard from an American user who'd bought an Ultimate 1MB at some point, and it was one of the black ones. And he had to replace the flash ROM with a physically different chip. Before the thing would work properly, it kept jumping into the memory test, just like one of the boards that I featured on my channel earlier this year, possibly, or late last year. But it was nothing to do with the Alliance RAM. The Alliance SRAMs, these used to have Renesas SRAMs on them. PLCC flash ROMs, I'm assuming Latharek bought a bad batch or a dodgy batch. Maybe they were fake completely, I don't know. But he seems to have left that problem behind him now, and everything seems to work. So I'm not expecting any problems from this. The only thing I might have to do with this is do the reset mod, which is sometimes needed on the 1200XL, because the 1200XL has got a noisy reset line, and those residual reset pulses can confuse the Ultimate 1MB, and you end up with a menu full of garbage characters. Easily fixed with a capacitor between reset and ground. So that's it. So I'm going to put these back in my little plastic box here, my little plastic basket. Great, these things. And I'll dismantle the machine, and if I notice anything of interest, I'll let you know. You've seen me dismantling 1200XLs before. I'm not going to go through all that again. I'll do that off camera. If I notice anything funky on the motherboard, I'll film it, let you know about it. Other than that, I'm going to crack on with the work. And at various points of interest, I'll give you a look at what's going on, and ultimately show you the fixed keyboard, polished out Perspex strip, slightly cleaned up case, and hopefully everything will just work. And we'll test it with a side 3 cartridge, as we always do, because that, you know, that's like the ultimate stability challenge for any 8-bit Atari. So join me shortly when you'll see some progress. Point of interest, it's upside down of course, but this board was made on May the 22nd, 1983. Little sticker there. I'll show you that now because I'm going to have to probably take that. I don't know, I might have to take that off actually to fit the DIN connector, but we'll see. Bloody flash ROMs again. Oh, I made a video, some of you might remember, I made a video about, it was 10 months ago or so, about a machine I was installing an Ultimate 1MB in. I think it was an 800XL or something. And after I put the Ultimate 1MB in, the thing just kept booting to the self-test all the time, rather than booting the OS as normal. And it didn't have bad RAM because the machine worked fine in stock condition, and I'd installed the bloody board perfectly well, and eventually what I figured out was that if I replaced the little flash ROM chip, this thing here, on the Ultimate 1MB board, it just magically worked. Same firmware, same everything, just changing the chip. And that Ultimate 1MB was one of the black ones with the Alliance SRAM and the diode bodge on it. Just swapping the flash ROM just made it work. Don't know why. I concluded at the time that the flash ROM that's in the board when you buy it is either from a dodgy batch, or it's not a genuine chip, or somehow it just behaves differently, or maybe possibly industrial standard chips behave differently to standard ones, and to do with the characteristics of the machine. Don't know, but I never used to experience these problems before. Never used to experience them until recently, until the newer Ultimate 1MB came out with the Alliance SRAM. Now we've got the purple ones. Now I thought when the purple ones came out, which I started to get this year, I was sent by various customers. Purple Ultimate 1MB, low profile, great. And I never had a problem with the first few that I got. No worries at all. So I thought the PLC flash ROM problem was done and dusted and finished. But look at this. So we've got the Ultimate in and we've got the VBXE in. The VBXE was a bit of a struggle just because the client actually sent the wrong one. We're putting a GTIA PAL adapter in this machine and the clearance just wasn't going to work out with the XL VBXE. So I ended up taking the header off, which is hard. Of course, the XL versions of the VBXE are now hard soldered to the bloody Antic adapter. So it was a titanic struggle to get the thing desoldered, the header here desoldered, so I could take the Antic adapter off that throws the VBXE backwards and replace it, attach it to an XE style one that throws the board forward. That was an absolute nightmare because it's all hard soldered. But anyway, I reckoned I'd done it okay. So I was anxious to test the machine. So let me show you what happens with this machine when I turn it on. So we get the... apologies for the video quality because I haven't actually put the UAV in the machine yet. It's going to get a UAV at some point, so we'll get colour and we'll get nice video. And of course we've got VBXE anyway. I haven't wired that jack up yet. So we get what you would expect. I've also put the cap between reset and ground on the CPU because I noticed that this machine was exhibiting the problem that we sometimes get with 1200XLs, where you get garbage along the bottom line of the screen here. No problem, that's fixed it, that's no problem at all. So the symptom that I'm getting is this. So I press C to boot the operating system and it goes straight into the memory test every time, and I cannot get beyond the memory test. So the next thing I did was I put this spare VBXE in the board, and when I did that, it worked. It didn't get stuck on the memory test, so naturally I assumed I'd knackered the VBXE by taking all the header pins off and modifying the board so that it would fit in an XE Antic adapter. But then I thought, hang on a minute, I've seen this problem before, and I remembered that video that I'd made a while ago. And not only that, I won't name the person, obviously, but another respected community member from the United States actually sent me an email a little while ago, or a private message, saying that he'd experienced the same thing as this with much less ambitious modifications, basically putting new Ultimate 1MB in Atari 8-bit computers, possibly with no other modifications whatsoever, just putting the Ultimate in, and his machine was booting straight to the memory test. And he's going to perform a few more experiments and actually feed back to Lotharic about this, because when he bought some replacement PLCC flash ROMs from online, wherever he bought them, and put them in the board and programmed them, the problem went away. So I thought maybe I haven't broken the VBXE the customer sent in, and obviously if I have, I'll have to give them this one. But I thought maybe I haven't. Maybe, although the boards are ostensibly identical, aside from the fact that the newer VBXE's got a bloody sticker on it and a black PCB, other than that, as far as I was aware, they were identical boards, but maybe they're not. So I went hunting around for my stash of PLCC flash ROMs that I'd bought a while ago, and with great difficulty, I have to say, owing to some driver issues, I managed to program one with the complete ROM, and I put it in this machine, and it fixes the issue, and it allows it to work with the modified VBXE. I'll show you. Right, so we've turned it off. Let's take the stock flash ROM out the board. It's a bit difficult because the extraction tool gets caught on the MMU header, but never mind. So I've got to take the cable out. So that's the original one. We'll put it to one side. And here's the chip that I just flashed this afternoon. Ostensibly identical. Yeah, ostensibly identical. Not ostensibly an identical part. So I'll put my chip in here and get the damn thing to locate. Press that in. Now I've already flashed this one with the new firmware, but I can't imagine that's going to make a difference to how the operating system behaves, because it's the same XLXE OS ROM we've got here. So I've got that chip in here. The original's up there. Right, now let's turn it on. Boot screen, because this is the newer firmware, and it boots into the OS. So what the bloody hell is going on with this? 3 hours I spent trying to track this problem down, purely because I doubted myself and thought that I'd broke the goddamn VBXE when I modified it to fit an XE adapter. But as far as I can tell so far, and certainly I'll own up to it if I find a problem later on and that all is not exactly well with this VBXE, everything I've just said is going to be completely invalid. But what the bloody hell? What's the difference between those two flash ROMs? And why is it that we're seeing problems with the stock flash ROM as supplied on the board, and yet when the customer or I go off and just order a batch of bloody PLCC flash ROMs from eBay or whatever, AliExpress, and stick them in the board, it works? The only reason I was able to figure out this problem is because I'd experienced it before, and I have so many of these things through my hands, and I encounter almost every little issue you could possibly have when installing one of these boards. And when I run into a problem like this, I can usually recall that information, and I've got all the parts, and I've got the program, and I've got the chips, and I've got everything I need to put it right. But in this case, I had a secondary issue, and naturally, as I've said before, if you've changed something, if you've modified something, it's probably the thing that you modified that's causing the issue. And I went down that mode of thinking until I thought, hang on a minute, what if it isn't that? What if I did do a competent job of modifying the VBXE and it's not that, and it's a bloody PLCC flash ROM again? And just to be absolutely sure, I did later on program the original PLCC flash ROM with the newer firmware and hook it up to the 1200XL with the white VBXE installed, and it still boots to the memory test. And the whole reason I had to do this work on the VBXE anyway, if I just grab another board. So this is the configuration I was faced with to start with. This is what the customer sent in. This being an XL, you naturally assumed that it needed an XL VBXE. I think I'd mentioned that in this particular configuration an XE board would be better, but it was forgotten about, whatever happened anyway. Even if it wasn't for this GTIA adapter, which has to sit in the GTIA socket here. Even if it wasn't for that and it was just a GTIA chip behind it, this thing can't clear the GTIA chip because it's thrown so far back. The GTIA chip's only about 5mm away from the back side of the Antic socket, but this thing completely blocks on the GTIA chip, even if there isn't extra stuff underneath it. So this was a non-starter. You'd have to put about 2 or 3 sockets stacked up, especially if you're going to put this thing in, just to get this thing to clear it. And I'm not happy with shipping a machine off with 3 sockets underneath it. It's just going to fall off. It's going to be a weak point in the whole system, connectivity wise, stability wise, and everything. That's why I ended up modifying this board. I know 1200XLs are hard to come by, but people do install this stuff in 1200XLs, and if you haven't, as a vendor or a developer, if you haven't got a 1200XL, if you haven't managed to source one, I mean, this customer was able to source one from the United States. Well, it's left to people like me to encounter all these bloody issues. Anyway, hopefully, I'll now be able to finish this machine and it'll all work, but we'll see. So we've got the PokeyMAX to wire up, we've got the PAL GTIA adapter to go in, and a little bit more wiring to do now. But at least the machine boots now. Right, so I'm pretty much done here, finally. It's, how long has it taken? It's 2 days since I started this, so I've worked across 3 days to get this actually done. Fairly intensely, it has to be said. Most of Tuesday afternoon, some of Tuesday evening, Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, and a bit this morning, just to get the last of the wiring done. But of course I was impeded by a couple of things, partly the flash ROM issue on the Ultimate 1MB, and also by an error of mine. I've gotten into the habit for some reason of hardwiring these jumpers on UAVs, mainly because on a lot of machines there's a vertical clearance issue, and this one was a basic board, and I didn't happen to have the 2mm pitch header strips or the jumpers needed to do things in the normal fashion, so I hardwired these. It's funny how these things work mentally. I'd noticed that when Spectre AV was released, which is the kind of Euro counterpart to this device, that there was a correlation between the jumper settings on the Spectre AV and some UAV that I happened to have in front of me at the time for the same machine, because each machine has different jumper configurations because of the different pinout usage of the CD4050 chip that this replaces. And once I'd registered that correlation, I assumed that that was the case across the board, which of course wasn't true. It is the case with Revision C UAVs, but this is of course a Revision D board, so I had all sorts of problems. I wasted about an hour and a half on Wednesday night wondering why I didn't have a picture. I didn't have a proper sync signal for the VBXE picture, and I just had nothing, just an unrecognisable mess coming out the other jack. And it was because the jumpers were the wrong way around, so I had to take them off, put them back on. Fortunately, I managed to do that without damaging the board. And as far as I can tell as well, the VBXE, which as you can see has been completely reoriented around 180 degrees in order to account for this GTIA chip and the GTIA PAL adapter that's underneath it, appears to work fine, despite the fact that when I struggled to get the header off this thing, because it's hard soldered on the EXTSEL version, I managed to nick a trace at the back of the board, but I fixed that preemptively. The important thing is when you've done a drastic modification like this and you think you might have damaged something, or even if you think you haven't damaged something, when you've got all the pins out of the holes and you've cleaned everything up, before you put a new connector on, check everything scrupulously, because it's far easier to fix a damaged trace or something before you put the header strip back on the board, because that's liable to obscure any problems and make it absolutely impossible to fix, and I wouldn't like to take this off a second time. So as far as I can tell, I'm going to have to run some VBXE demos, which fortunately we can do because most of them are for PAL machines, but this is now a PAL machine, a bona fide PAL machine, thanks to the GTIA adapter and the chipset swap, and I'll need to test that VBXE is fully functional, but I think it is. It certainly outputs a picture, which is a good thing. So obviously you can't really see the GTIA PAL adapter. It's underneath the GTIA chip, but it's nothing. There's not much to see. It's just a board that's roughly the same footprint as the GTIA chip, a little bit wider, and of course I had to. If I open this up briefly. As you can see, the clearance between the back of the XE adapter and the front of the GTIA adapter is basically non-existent. And I'm pretty sure this would potentially cause an issue even if there wasn't a GTIA adapter here. And as I said when I was ranting about the PLCC flash ROM on the Ultimate 1MB, it wouldn't really take much in the way of tweaking the XE and possibly even the XL ANTIC adapter, but definitely the XE ANTIC adapter, such that this would fit properly in a 1200 XL without having to get a file out and start sanding bits off the front of boards to get them to sit nicely next to each other. It wouldn't take much, so I have to wonder if a lot of this stuff, when somebody has a bright idea, we can unify the VBXE adapters and have the XL adapter throw the board out a little bit better. That'll be better for 600 XLs, better for 800 XLs, like less likely to interfere with the keyboard. Did anybody stop and think, well, hang on a minute, how is this going to impact, I don't know, XEGS machines, 1200 XL machines, etc, etc. I don't think anybody stopped for a minute to think about that. Both VBXEs are a tricky fit in a 1200 XL, as far as I'm concerned, certainly the more recent incarnations. But anyway, it's in, the lid closes, the board appears to work. One thing worth remarking on here is this piggyback 74HC T08 chip with all the legs bent up apart from the pin 7 and pin 14, power and ground. And these three here, which is one of the gates here, which is taking CAS inhibit into pin 1, and it's taking another signal here, and it's outputting external select pulled up to 5 volts on pin 2. And the reason we need that, because despite the fact that's actually part of the PBI modification, Bob Woolley's PBI modification, but I wouldn't normally do it. I only do the part that's pertinent to the Ultimate 1 megabyte installation. But I've had to do it on this occasion because, of course, VBXE needs an external select signal so that it can overlay its own MEMAC VRAM window and override the onboard memory, as far as I understand it anyway. And it also has hardware registers up in the D6 and D7 region. And the final thing we've got here is the PokeyMAX 4. You saw that in the previous video about the 600XL. Exactly the same board, exactly the same wiring. These are the 4 address lines. I decided to pick them off the cartridge port because they're nice and handy. They'll be down here as well near the OS-ROM socket. Could make some sort of little adapter that plugged into that OS-ROM socket, I suppose. But anyway, they're taken from the back of the cartridge port. Don't see a problem with that. And of course, we've also got our DIN 13 connector there, which is exactly where the RF modulator output used to be. How anybody could have a problem with that? I mean, it looks perfect. Turned out really nicely, that one. Very nicely. Always a bit of a heart in the mouth moment cutting the hole for those things, especially on a machine as desirable as this one. What else have I done? Well, I've fixed the keyboard as well. So just put the lid here. There was a couple of keys, I forget, I think it was the 5 key and the insert key had been snapped off completely in transit, unfortunately, and just the stubs of the little plungers that were in the undersides of the keycaps. Fortunately, I had a donor keyboard. And to extract those snap plungers, what I ended up doing, because there was no way to get a purchase on them. So this is just a spare key here. So what the situation we had, if I'll just put this back in here for a minute, we had a keycap with a sheared off plunger, stem, whatever, fully embedded in there, and there was nothing to get a grip of. So what I've done is I've drilled a little pilot hole in the middle, and then I just put a little screw, a small screw, just drove it in a few millimeters, and then grabbed the screw head with a pair of pliers and yanked it out, and it pulled this out. I've polished the perspex as promised, got most of the lighter scuffs out. There's a couple of scratches on it which I'm not going to start going 400 grit sandpaper and doing a complete polish job, because there's a high chance that I make it worse than it is. So that's done. I've got rid of a couple of scuffs on the case. They've gone now, so it's absolutely clean. One interesting thing I did notice here is this number on the back. I only noticed this when I was cleaning the case this morning. That's sort of etched or scratched, or maybe with a little Dremel tool somebody's etched that into the back of the case. I've no idea what it is, but there you are. There's an extra little bit of information there, a little curiosity on the back of the case, and there's the DIN 13 connector for you, all you DIN 13 aficionados. So the machine's basically finished now, hopefully. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plug the keyboard in. I haven't screwed the motherboard into position yet, and you'll notice that the case, it does actually have to be pushed down. The reason for that is the keyboard flex connector is sort of snug up against the PokeyMAX, but we can fold that ribbon cable to make things a little bit better when we come to actually properly reassemble the machine. So what I think I'll do is we'll just basically do a power on test to begin with. Oh my god, what a bloody mind-boggling ball ache. So I think I've got this machine stable now. I left it for a few days actually. The owner of the machine was away for a week, so I decided to do other things, including tidy the spare room and stuff, because the queue's basically empty apart from 5200, which I'm waiting for parts for. So I left this. I like to live with the machine once it's finished, because I've been hasty in the past to send machines back. And the last thing you want is the machine getting back to the owner and having an issue after the fact. So I wasn't exactly living with the machine. I actually had to clear the desk to get this machine off the desk to do some work on a guitar as well. So, but I've got it back on the desk as of this morning. And the first thing it did when I turned it on was go straight to the Ultimate 1 megabyte setup menu with config profile reset message, which means that the profile on the Ultimate 1MB NVRAM wasn't read properly, or it was corrupted, and it's taking you straight to the menu. And it did this consistently time and time and time again. And of course this here is the VBXE that I modified. It was originally an XL board, as you saw earlier in the video, and now it's an XE orientation. Probably why the sticker's upside down now, unless they put them on beforehand so they'll all be the same way up. I wasn't too sure about that. I would imagine it would be the same way up as the text on the front, the screen printing on the front, but I don't know. Sticker's upside down. Anyway, naturally, as always, when something goes wrong, as I've said before, you touched it, you broke it. So I suspect that this might be the problem. Not that any of the VBXE tests showed any operational problems whatsoever. But nevertheless, I took it out, and I'll show you what I put in its place. The spare one. So this one here, I put this one, this is from my spares box. This is my last XE VBXE. Unfortunately, it was from one of the batches which had the male header pins, because of course Letharek changed it midway through his manufacturing run of these things at some point a few years ago. This used to be a female header, and the XE adapter had male header pins on, the antic adapter. Of course now it's changed over, and the reason for that is simply so that all the boards have these male headers out of the factory. And for an XL configuration, he solders it straight to the XL adapter this way. And for an XE board, he doesn't solder anything to it, and it goes into the adapter. That was the reason for that. But of course, it means that all the VBXE adapters I've had going back years don't fit this kind of board now. But fortunately, this one here does have the male header pins on it. So I was able to plug it into the adapter, and it's the last adapter I've got with a female header on it, so I can't actually do anything with the other one now. But I plugged this one in, and it seemed to be a lot better. It booted up consistently, powered up I should say. There was no problem with reset or anything. It was the power on process that was resulting in this jump straight into the setup menu with a config error basically. But I did manage to observe it once doing it with this board. So what I went ahead and did is I removed the capacitor that I'd fitted to this board to address the common issue. It's the cap was actually, well, it's still there, one end's detached now. So what I actually did is I went in underneath here, and I've disengaged one leg of the capacitor that I put between reset and ground on the CPU. Now the reason I did this was because I was sure I saw the 1200XL noisy reset line issue manifest itself before I updated the Ultimate 1MB firmware, so you got all sorts of garbage on the menu. And the reason being that the I/O RAM under the hardware registers has been deselected by multiple echoes of the reset pulse on the 1200XL. So I was wondering, is reset coming up a bit too sluggishly for this particular combination of parts? So I've disconnected that leg. And then I tested the whiteboard again, and I haven't had the problem reoccur since I disconnected that capacitor with the whiteboard, my board. So one might conclude, oh, there's a problem with the black board that you modified because you replaced the header on it. So what I did is I dug out my 130XE and I fitted a VBXE in this machine, absolutely, yeah, well over a decade, probably about 2011 or something. Fitted a VBXE, much older revision of VBXE, an old black board, right from the first run I think, probably hand assembled by Candle. And that board's still in that XE machine, but I took it out and I swapped it for this one. And I had to borrow the adapter from this machine because I've only got one adapter. I used it when I donated it when I converted this board. And of course there was no problem at all on the 130XE. The 130XE works perfectly fine, and it's got an Ultimate 1MB in it, but it's a much older revision of Ultimate 1MB. It is not one of these purple boards. Again, I think it's a black board from at least 10 years ago. So it's got Renaissance SRAMs on it, totally different board, the original design, and there's not a problem. And I tested it, powered it on again. It never once jumped into the Ultimate 1MB setup menu with config reset or anything like that at all. I want to test it more extensively, but it does appear to work fine. If I put this board back in this machine now, with that capacitor disconnected, 100% of the time it boots to the ultimate 1 MB menu. Even if you just save the configuration and then power cycle the machine, it takes you straight back to the menu 100% of the time. Why? I don't know, but yet it works in a different machine. So I think it's something to do with the interaction between these two, because there's nothing wrong with the setup. I know we've got a PokeyMAX 4 in here. I did disconnect that earlier on, I took it out, and that didn't make any difference at all. So who the hell knows? Now, I'm not really keen to start pulling this machine apart again, swapping out chips and antic chips and CPUs and stuff to try and iteratively eliminate this issue. I've hit upon something that works with this particular board here, and I'm inclined to just leave it be unless I observe a problem again. The moment I observe an issue with this board in the machine, then we're back to square one and we start again. It never used to be like this. I mean, I know all the quirks of this particular platform, the 1200XL, hence the capacitor, and we've got various things we can change out when things don't work out quite right. But anyway, let's power the machine on again and we'll see what happens. I'm not going to bother connecting the LEDs. No point. Just every time now, every single time. Oh, right, here we go. And it boots. No problem. Right, I've still got to go ahead and update the ultimate firmware, so why don't we do that? Now, as it happens, I've just finished developing a little update for the ultimate BIOS setup menu. So I think we'll flash that to the client's machine, let him test it. Right, here we go, and I'll show you what I've done. It's not much. It's just a couple of extra things I've added. Right, so there we go. So now if we go in here, I always have that set to Altera Basic. I change that back every time the bloody profile resets itself. The clock reset as well. So let's set the clock again. It's the 5th. And it is 13:33. That's on. Right, so we've got our, there we go. So we've got our PokeyMAX options here. And we've got the PokeyMAX core number. We've got VBXE, should have an enable switch. Yes, we have. So there we go. So we've got the VBS3P2, so that's VBXE side 3 PokeyMAX 2 plugin. Now you see I've added a build date to the info screen here, and I've added another option here, and it's called factory reset. And I just thought this might be useful, especially for somebody who's got a machine, or they've built one and they've put this firmware on it and tested it, but they want to ship the machine as the ultimate board should be by default anyway. They should not have, out of the factory as it were, a valid configuration. So actually what this machine was doing is what should happen essentially when you first put the board in the machine and turn it on. So it's nice for the person who buys the computer or installs the board to be taken straight to the configuration menu the first time they power the machine on. So if you click this here, it wipes the entire NVRAM, the whole lot, all the profiles, and it resets the clock. I'll go ahead and do it anyway. So you get factory reset, are you sure? And then you get delete all profiles, yes, and you do that and it reboots. And this is what we got when we had the problem here, profile 1 reset. So everything is taken back to its not only default settings, but none of the profiles are valid at all. Now, something I've done here, which I think has been long overdue, is when the system clock is invalid, so it's not holding a valid time and date, it's now reset to the build date rather than 0, the year 2000, because obviously it can't be in the past. The actual time and date can't be prior to the date the firmware was built. So that's going to save a wee little bit of time, I think. So now if we go in here, we've just got to change the month. There we go, so there's the date done. Time, not much I can do about the time, of course. It's 36 now. So a little bit easier to set the clock. A few fewer keystrokes when you have to set the clock for the first time, and we can set the other options that we want here. So there you go. So just a little. That's like a system builder's option there. There's no shortcut key, so it's impossible to trigger it by mistake, he said. But I think I'll leave that in. I think it's useful. It means that you can wipe the whole NVRAM without having to take the battery out. It's basically the same effect as taking the battery out of the board, leaving it a couple of seconds and then putting it back in again. Not that that's particularly difficult on the purple boards, but it was when the battery was on the bottom of the board. So you don't have to do that now. So if you've just put the board in the machine, you want to ship it off as if it's all brand new and unused, you can do a factory reset when the screen goes blank, turn the machine off and put it in the box and you're done, basically. So maybe that'll be useful. So, there's a couple of things I wanted to try on the machine as well in the way of stability tests, so we'll get into that in a minute. Right, so we got side 3.0 connected here, because the reason I've used that one is because I have absolutely no confidence that this later revision is going to work. And to be honest, if it doesn't work, that's fucking tough, because I've just had it with trying to tailor the machine beyond doing a few perfunctory changes to trying to tailor the machine to get them to work with these fucking things. I've just had it with it. Use a different multi-cartridge if necessary. Now even the side 3.0 is upsetting this thing. Yes, right, finally we're in. Okay. Now first thing I want to show you is BBC Basic, which has been ported to the Atari 8-bit by IVOP, and I'll show you the thread on Atari Age about that. So let's have a look in here. Now what I've done is distributed it on a disk image. Well, there's several disk images actually, because Mr. Fisher's come along and tweaked the splash screen. So we've got like 2 posts at the beginning of the thread about the actual ported interpreter, and then about a dozen threads with different loading screens underneath it. It's just a sign that more or less everything that needs to be done on this platform has been done, when the 2 most active threads that I can see on the forum at the moment, one's about the loading screen for BBC Basic and whether the owl is in the right place and stuff like that, and another one is about the V-gate, which is about tweaking the overscan at the side of the screen so you don't get bits. Very much gilding the lily, I think. We've run out of problems to address here. And now we're just obsessing about minutiae. But anyway, that's the impression. That's what it looks like to me anyway. But so we got a disk image. But what I thought would be fun is to try and run it straight from the loader, straight off the FAT partition. Now when I had an XEX, this is the auto run sys file that you get off the disk image. Now initially I found that it wouldn't work. So rather than have a multi-stage binary within its segments to copy blocks of code under the OS ROM during the load, he actually opens an IOCB to do it. I think Turbo Basic does that as well. It's not really necessary. It's not the way I would have done it. I would have had a code stub loaded into somewhere in memory and just repeatedly called that after every segment, and that would have copied the code underneath, and you wouldn't have needed an IOCB. So there's 2 different loading mechanisms in the Side 3 loader. There's a quick loader, which is for XEX files and such, and that doesn't support IOCBs at all, so it wouldn't work. But when I changed the extension to EXE, or COM works as well, it worked fine, because that uses the built-in DOS, and that's got umpteen IOCB channels, so it does work. So if we load it, and we get a nice loading screen there, and it is nice. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not throwing shade at the splash screen, but I mean, it'd be nice to see some actual posts from people who've tested the interpreter and actually used it, rather than just about loading screens. But there we go. So we can get a disk directory here if we do a *dir. Gotta remember this from school. So those files are in the same directory. They didn't show up in the loader because I haven't got it set to display all files. There's a report command as well. 83 acorn. Now how the hell do you load a file, start. Now I'm trying to remember. Start. Now it uses a redefined character set as well, like a BBC character set, and apparently it's impossible to print the control character with the code 13 because that's the carriage return character used by the BBC, and 155, which is the Atari carriage return, clashes with one of the token names, and it would upset the parser. I don't know. I mean, I haven't had a close look at the source code, but I'm sure. Surely it would be possible to swap those around and get rid of the token 155. Or is it? Maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe it's so entrenched in the code it's impossible. But that seems kind of weird. Or if you updated the scanner to start at the end, perhaps, I don't know. So it wouldn't trip up over a token of 155. But anyway, I'm getting away from the point. So let's see if we can load something. It's the chain command. Apparently we want chain. What are we? Clock SP D clock sp.bbc. So this is obviously measuring the real effective speed of the CPU with the DMA enabled. If you turn the DMA off, it probably goes up to about 1.7 megahertz. But BBC Basic, of course, is a very advanced basic at the time. It's got a built-in assembler as well, which I always thought was pretty cool. Alright, so it's a comparison to the actual speed of the BBC. It's probably still a pretty quick interpreter. I didn't write much, if any, assembly language at school, even though I was dabbling in it. Well, eventually I was dabbling in it in the early 90s. So I left school in 1989, so I wasn't really touching the assembler at school with the BBC micros. But I just remember it being very fast, and I remember the scrolling being very fast. This would be nice with a screen accelerator, I'll bet. And I often wished the Atari had used display list load memory scan pointers for scrolling instead of actually moving the screen RAM. That would have made things a lot quicker. That might be something fun to do. So what else have we got here? Let's have a look at Rainbow. So we're going to use some graphics here. Chain D Rainbow. Oh, yeah. Alright, so we get display list interrupt. So if we break out, what's going on there? Break out of this. Weird. List. Oh, nothing. Now this reminded me of a very amusing episode from school. My friend Johnny and I used to go to the computer club on a Friday lunchtime. I was actually studying computer studies, but he wasn't, but anybody was allowed to come into the club. And we were trying to hack into Mr. Bell's Winchester hard disk network, his Etched server, and his Winchester hard disk kept going down all the time. And the poor man, he had this dark blue shiny suit, you know, when the polyester suits used to go shiny around the arse. Anyway, so we were constantly trying to make the poor bloke's life a misery even more so. And Johnny, I couldn't break. So he's had his Ethernet 2000 menu or whatever it was, and Johnny managed to break into it. Obviously, it was break key protected and stuff, but somehow Johnny managed to. Because Johnny was always good at breaking stuff. I always used to get him to test my software in the 90s when I was writing stuff on the Atari back then. He could break anything, absolutely anything. And so Johnny managed to break into the Ethernet menu and list it. And he wanted to change one of the menu options to an obscene quote from the Alfie Noakes sketch on the Derek and Clive tapes. Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, which we were listening to at the time. and found very amusing. I think he changed one of them to Alfie Noakes up the arse or something like that. And of course he was so overcome with excitement to have actually got in the menu and be editing one of the lines, he forgot the closing quote. And of course the BBC Basic didn't actually alert him to that fact, although it has here in immediate mode. I don't think it alerted him to the fact when he was actually editing a line in the programme. So he missed the end quote off and then saved it. And of course that was the menu committed to the hard disk on the Winchester hard drive. And then of course the next time the menu came up, he thought it would display the obscene message. But of course it didn't. It errored out and it trapped the error, so that what we had was the menu continually trying to redraw itself, hitting an error and then going back to the top again. And all of these BBC computers all around the computer room all had this continually redrawing menu. I think we just fled the room basically because he completely fucked the whole thing up. It wasn't like a like a sleeper. The idea was that it would just sit there and nobody'd notice for days on end until Mr. Bell would be like, "What this?" But that didn't happen, obviously, because he missed the end quote off. And of course the Atari Basic will let you get away with that. It'll put the quote in for you. But the BBC Basic won't. And here I've hit the same thing again. Very amusing. But and Mr. Bell, a few days later, or maybe later the same day, I think, when we were coming out of the library, which was right across the hall from the computer lab, he cornered the pair of us. So we were always wandering around together, and he said, "Do you happen to know anything about this obscene message that was on the Etched menu? Somebody broke into the menu and put this obscene message in." And I said, "No, I don't know anything about it." He knew it was us. He knew it was us. He may not have twigged on to the fact it was Johnny, but he couldn't prove a thing, of course. We didn't have cameras and security footage and stuff in those days. And he obviously knew it was us. But I think it was towards the end of our school career. And he liked me anyway. And he knew it was us, but he didn't do anything about it. There wasn't really any way he could prove it, actually. But clearly it was done by somebody. Well, you would think it was done with somebody with technical nous, but in fact it was just Johnny hammering away at the brake key at just the right moment. But there you go. There's a little reminiscence there. So how do I load this in without actually running it? Can I list it now? Yes. Oh, there we go. So there's that's very interesting. So DIM P100, I can't even remember what that means. We've got hexadecimal equates here, labels. And oh yes, well this is an assembly routine. Obviously, this is a perfect example how we would do inline assembler. It's brilliant. I mean, it really is. So how do you set the origin? Where's the origin set? So do you get to? I can't remember how you set where in memory this actually goes. But I mean, this is just absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Oh, so nostalgic. Really is. If that background was black, there you go, Mr. Fish. We need a black background. This is desperately what this system needs, is a black background. I don't know why it won't break out. I think the guy mentioned who did this port. I think he mentioned why the break key doesn't break out the program. Well, that's rather problematic actually. So how the fuck do you get out of it? There's no way to do it. And if I press reset, is the program gone? Yes, it is. But anyway, it's a good fun project. There's something else that's been recently attempted. Well, it was attempted before, which is a port of Elite. Now, another chap called Mark, I believe, he got some way towards getting this done, but I'm going to run it here and see what happens. I haven't got a... Yeah, sure. Right, what do I do now? I don't know what you can actually... This is a demo, of course, and I don't know what you can actually do with it, if anything. Oh, nothing. I want to see that animation again. Alright, let's see some animation. Some wireframe graphics there. I mean, it looks really nice. We're using the Antic 4-5 colour 160 pixel text mode. Looks like it's a narrow playfield, 32 characters. It looks like there's a lot left to do. I can't really do anything with it yet, but there wasn't any point in plugging the joystick in. So what I think we'll do now, as usual, we'll go into the side 3 loader and we'll run some tests. And we'll run an RWCRC. So I hope you enjoyed that one, and I just desperately hope this computer stays stable. Like I say, if it has problems with this version of Side 3, I'm sorry, there's not much I can do about it. It's taken me this long to get this damn thing to work. Sometimes these jobs are easy going still, but most of the time, at least half of the time, it's a struggle session to get things to work, and I don't understand why that is all of a sudden. VBXE is very old established technology. Ultimate 1MB, very old established technology, but they've been changed, they've been updated, they've been laid out differently, and I'm sure that the sourcing for the components has changed over time, as is necessary often. These are old parts, there's long discontinued FPGAs and stuff like that, so a lot of that's unavoidable. But these insidious incompatibilities that just lead you on a wild goose chase. So I'll leave you with a shot of this partially reassembled 1200XL, which is busy running a read-write integrity test. And thank you very much for watching. Special thank you to my patrons as ever. Without you, these videos probably wouldn't be made. Likewise to the video sponsor for their continuing support, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be back soon tinkering on with some other Atari or other type of machine. So thank you very much for watching. Please leave your comments below, and if you leave a like on the video and consider subscribing if you're not already subscribed, that's always a big help. Thank you very much in advance for that. With that said, I will leave you and see you in the next video. So, but no, wait, that's not the end of the video. There's actually more. The problem of the machine constantly booting to the Ultimate 1MB setup menu did come back, and it happened regardless of whether I've got the modified VBXE in the board or whether I've got this white one here from my space box installed. So I've concluded that there's nothing wrong with the VBXE that I modified. Now, although at one point the machine was constantly going to the Ultimate 1MB setup with this VBXE installed, not with this one installed, I still don't think there's anything wrong with this VBXE. It hasn't been damaged by being modified. I just think that for some reason the characteristics of this board, because we know it works perfectly well in a different Atari, are just somehow subtly different to this one. So with this board installed, what we had was what seemed like an intermittent issue, and I would think, oh well, it's all fixed now, it's fine, it no longer jumps into the Ultimate 1MB setup menu when I switch it on with profile reset, and then I would leave it for a couple of hours or a whole day and then put the board back in the case, put everything back together, and then find that it was doing it again. What I eventually noticed is that it did it once, the first time you turned it on, but then not thereafter, until such time as it had been left off or unplugged completely for like 2 hours or something. So eventually I began to think this could be a power related issue. So I've even gone to I've replaced this big cap here, and I remembered something else about this computer as well, which I'd completely overlooked or forgot about rather. When I first took it apart, I tested the machine when I first got it before I took it to pieces. And then obviously to do the work I have to take the shielding off and everything, and what somebody had done previously on this machine is they'd put a huge piece of metal, L-shaped angled metal, aluminium or something, about this size, and bolted it to the top of this heatsink on the rectifier, the bridge rectifier, which turns the 9V DC input into 5 volts and 12 volts. So 12 volts isn't used, but it does. There are two regulators, 5 volt and 12 volt. And I didn't think much of it. What I assumed is that somebody had felt the heat coming off the regulator and didn't like it and was worried that the machine was overheating or something. So they decided to put more metalwork in. They'd also taken the heatsink off completely. I think they've desoldered the regulators as well, judging by the solder on the bottom of the board. And they'd put copious amounts of thermal compound back, far too much of it, and I had to clean it off. But I didn't think anything more of it because the machine worked. I tested it again thereafter before I started doing the work. No problems. And I just thought it was somebody being a bit spooked by the fact that this thing got hot. But we don't know. Now that I'm looking at it and think, oh, could there be a power related issue? I've only got one aftermarket AC power supply. I think all the rest of them broke and they're all potted, so I couldn't fix them. I think the wires broke right where they went into the casing. And I have thrown out a lot of stuff. So the owner of the machine is going to send up, or has sent up, I haven't received it yet, but he's going to send up an original 9V AC Atari power supply, just to eliminate the power supply as a possible source of issues. So that'll be good. I think that's well worth doing. I can't see any problems with any of the other caps on the board. I couldn't actually see a problem with this one. It was just one of those things that I thought was worth trying, because I thought if this cap doesn't charge up properly when you first turn it on, maybe that could explain power ripples that were upsetting the ultimate 1MB somehow. Don't know. Didn't make any difference. Waste of time. But today I decided to try something else, which I did attempt the other night, but I was trolled by a snapped wire, and obviously the more I take this machine apart repeatedly again and again and again, there's more risk of bending a pin or snapping a wire. I did both of those things and eventually I gave up. But what I wanted to try today was a different ultimate 1MB, and that's one thing we haven't tried yet. We've already replaced the PLCC flash ROM in the purple ultimate 1MB here, the one that actually was sent up with the machine, and that changed the behaviour of the machine in a positive sense, because the original chip, this one here, the operating system just won't boot with it at all. It either goes to the memory test or it black screens. But maybe that's not the only thing that was wrong with this. Now, I'm not saying it's faulty. I don't think the ultimate 1MB board's faulty, and I don't think if you sent this back and got it replaced, the replacement would be any different in any way, shape or form. But what I'm wondering is if this board, the ultimate 1MB, which has been subject to continuous redesign, different RAM, different parts sourced from different vendors, no doubt. This is about the third redesign of this board. So a lot's changed, particularly to account for Alliance SRAM. Now this is an older board, which of course has the original Renaissance SRAM. This board probably dates from, by the looks of it, this could be a 10-year-old board, conceivably. Black board, they were originally this colour. It does have the current limiting resistors on it, I hope. In fact, yes, this does predate, by the looks of it. This predates Litharek's involvement in Ultimate 1MB, so I'm going to have to be careful here and make sure that if I do leave this one in the machine, it's got the RD4 and RD5 resistors that turned out to be necessary. Since I first put this board in the machine, I haven't had a single problem, so it hasn't been turned on for quite a long time. If I switch it on, just boots as normal, boots the OS. No problem. This board has not jumped into the config menu once since I put it in this machine. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. Now, of course, I can't conclude that this means it's fixed yet. I need to live with it for another day or two. I need to leave it for 4 hours completely unplugged with the case on and everything, and then come back, turn it on, see if it works. But if it does continue to work, then it's going to be a case of this Ultimate 1MB, the purple one, doesn't like this computer. And I'm not going to be very happy about that, because if I didn't have these spare boards lying around, this whole assignment would have been completely impossible to finish and impossible to warranty. All because these boards have been messed around with. This board is characteristically not identical to this one. There's a whole host of reasons for that. Oh, the Renaissance SRAM became too scarce or became too expensive. What I find amusing is that this board here, as soon as these were introduced, the price went up by about 10 quid over the previous iteration of Ultimate 1MB. You have to actually pay more for a board that presents all these issues when you put it in the goddamn machine. Your extra money is not paying for any kind of material improvement other than the fact that the battery is now on the top of the board. We've got SRAM on the board that was problematic when it was first introduced, or it was thought to be problematic, and we've got PLCC flash ROMs that in about half a dozen instances that I know of, not just me, other customers, where the PLCC flash ROM had to be swapped out arbitrarily for some other part just to get the machine to get past the memory test. So not good, not good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to physically fit this board in the machine. As I say, I'll check to see if I need to put some inline resistors on the RD4 and RD5 lines. I think the board could be that old. And we'll put the case back on and we'll see if it continues to work. And then I might actually try this VBXE back in it as well and see what that does. And I'm very happy to notice that when I look more closely at the board, on the bottom of the board here, I have already added the RD4 and RD5 current limiting resistors on the bottom of the board there, and I've sealed them with lacquer, so we've got no worries about the cartridge blowing the CPLD on this board. I've already thought ahead and I've put the resistors on the appropriate traces. So this board can go in this machine potentially permanently with no issue whatsoever. So, and I suspect that's what's going to happen. Okay, machine is reassembled. I've even put the black VBXE back in the board, because why not? That's the one the customer sent in after all. So let's test. Right, works. So if it works in 2 hours or 4 hours or the next morning when I turn it on, I'm going to consider this fixed. Whether or not it works well with side 3, couldn't give two shits at this point. The main thing I want to do is provide the client with a machine that doesn't arbitrarily jump into the configuration menu for absolutely no reason when he first turns it on. Of course I'll have to do the stability tests again, but yeah, that's looking very good so far. There we go, absolutely perfect. So it's 24 hours now since I fitted the black Ultimate 1MB, which is from the first run, I think hand assembled by Candle-O-Sin in 2011 or whenever it was. And I dug it out the spares box and I fitted it to this machine, and it has cured all of the issues that I was having. The machine still doesn't like this black VBXE for some reason. I was getting corruption in the Ultimate 1MB setup menu with this board installed, but I still think there's nothing wrong with it, or nothing wrong with it in the sense that it's not faulty. I haven't damaged it by modifying it because it works in another computer, but we'll have to do more tests on that going forward because I'm stuck with this one now. But the flying ointment has definitely been this board here, the purple Ultimate 1MB, which and the reason I didn't try and swap this a week ago or even on Thursday night gone, which is now 3 days ago, when I noticed that this machine was still glitching out. And the reason I didn't swap it there and then is that I'd already replaced the PLCC flash ROM, and I found it completely inconceivable that the Ultimate 1MB revised 2K25 board, the old singing, old dancing, purple redesigned board that was released with a lot of fanfare, could be a regression compared to a 14-year-old Ultimate 1MB board. I found that completely unbelievable. Silly me. That mistake cost me an awful lot of time. So why does this board not work in this machine? Well, I don't know. But all I know is it was messed with. The design has changed compared to the black board that's in the machine. And of course the main difference, apart from the layout and the fact that the battery is now on the top and all the components have moved around, the main difference is that it now has Alliance SRAM. And really all the questions concerning the reliability and compatibility of these boards started when the Renesas SRAMs were replaced with Alliance SRAMs, which happened back in 2024. We had, as I've already talked about, the high volume buyer of Ultimate 1MB boards who started to receive, I think early 2024, some boards that he noticed had Alliance SRAM on them all of a sudden, and he had issues with them. And at the time I thought these issues were probably in retrospect caused by the PLCC flash ROMs, because I do have documented evidence since then of other people having issues with the flash ROMs as supplied. And I fixed a machine early this year which was supplied with, I think, a black board. I think it was a black board, one of the sort of interim designs where it was still the original layout but it had the Alliance SRAMs on it. And I fixed that. That machine was jumping straight into the OS memory test, which is exactly what I saw with this board before I replaced the flash ROM. And in both cases, replacing the flash ROM solved that particular problem. Now, however, this is a purple board, and this had a persistent issue, which was the fact that when the machine was turned on cold for the first time, it would persistently jump into the Ultimate Setup menu, and it would claim that the profile was corrupted and the profile was reset. But if you power cycled the machine again thereafter, it booted as normal, and I just could not get past that issue. I tried a different CPU, different antic chip, I even replaced the big cap on the motherboard. I started to think it might be power related, but nothing worked anyway. But what did work was removing this board and replacing it with an old Ultimate 1MB with Renesas SRAMs. Now, what I find especially ironic about this, if we look at the actual product page, so this is the version of Ultimate 1MB that was released, well, it finally went on sale I think about a year ago now, is all the spiel here. Ultimate is one of the best Atari 8-bit internal upgrades ever, correct? Invented by my great friend Candlosin. Installation of this upgrade takes me approximately 5 minutes, and even a rookie can handle it at home without finding a professional technician at extra costs. Is that correct?
Are you serious?
We've now got 2 examples just featured on this channel alone where I had to have recourse to a supply of PLCC flash ROMs to get the damn thing to boot past the OS memory test. I think the previous machine was an 800XL. You could argue that the 1200XL is a little bit off the beaten path when it comes to installing Ultimate 1MB, but I don't think an 800XL is anything out of the ordinary. And in this particular case with this machine, with the 1200XL, I've actually had to replace the board entirely to get it to work reliably. But it's difficult to understand how this can be sold as a 5-minute installation job when on those occasions, and certainly not all the time, but sometimes, and it seems to me more often than in the past, you're going to run into an issue which you can't troubleshoot unless you've got a supply of spare flash ROMs. Ideally, a spare Ultimate 1MB board from an earlier revision, which is what I've had to fall back on in this particular case, plus a load of custom chips for the host machine in case you're told that, oh, try a different antic, try a different CPU. A lot of things with these old completers just aren't particularly determinate, and I do think it's an oversimplification to say, oh, it's just 5 minutes, you just solder 4 wires and you just put it in at the best of times. And I don't think the situation's been helped by taking a very, very mature design and then just arbitrarily making changes to it without very, very scrupulously testing those changes in the field. It's taken somebody like me to spend an open-ended number of hours troubleshooting this stuff to actually get the machine to the point where it works as it's supposed to. And as I say, I don't think we can conclude that there's anything wrong with the host machine if a board from 14 years ago, stuck in the computer, works absolutely perfectly with the original CPU, original antic chip, nothing else changed at all. Likewise, if we look on the Retro Lemon page, it's also got more or less the same spiel. Installation of the upgrade is really straightforward. It's easy, it's simple, it's fun. Well, I didn't consider this much fun, to be quite honest with you. It's been an absolute fucking nightmare, like death by 1,000 cuts. A job that should have taken 2 to 3 afternoons is now spread out into 2 fucking weeks. And again, also in the present version, the purple version, some fixes were applied in comparison to the initial release. Now it's 100% safe and sound. Well, I disagree very, very, very strongly here. So I thought it's perfectly conceivable that this board was an improvement on the previous release, because the previous release was an interim version with Alliance SRAMs on it, as you can see here, and a diode bodged onto the board because there was some doubt about how well these SRAMs worked with TTL logic. So we had a diode bodged. It was bodged on all sorts of different parts of the board. There was cut traces. There's the cut traces there. This board had some slight changes to it. Not very dramatic, but just slight little changes, because we got this little via here, CAS inhibit via, which wasn't present on the prior boards. You can recognise there's this little diamond here. But the board wasn't designed with this diode bodge in mind. So I did think it perfectly plausible that the purple board had some fixes applied in comparison to the previous release, i.e. the black board with the bodge diode on it. Now it's 100% safe and sound, but to say that this purple board is an improvement in any way, shape or form over the original run of Candle Ultimate 1MB boards, many of which were hand assembled, and I just put it in the machine and it just works. This is exactly what I would expect to see when doing this kind of job. You put it in and it works. I've installed Ultimate 1MB and VBXE, and probably it's got to be over a dozen 1200 XLs over the years, easily. And yeah, now and again you get a little bit of an issue and I've had to tweak something, but nothing like this where I've had to actually toss the board out and replace the damn thing. And also when the boards became purple, the price went up. I think it was by about £10 at Retro Lemon. I asked Jakob at the time, are these boards going to be more expensive, before, when I was talking about them in the Side 3 is a Nightmare video, and I was talking about these purple boards and all the hoo-ha made about them. I said, are these boards going to go up in price as well just because they're purple now? And they got the battery on the top, and yes, he confirmed that they would, by about 10 quid, and I think that actually came to pass. So you're paying more money for a board that is no longer available with my firmware pre-installed because of the bloody pig-headedness of the vendor. You can't buy it with my firmware pre-installed now, but you're paying a price which is almost equivalent to the price of the older boards with my firmware installed on them. And as far as I can see, certainly in the case of this machine, it's a regression compared to the 14-year-old board I've ended up putting in the computer. And the other thing, this diode, I'm assuming this D1 diode here is for the diode that was necessary to get this RAM to work, but it's not populated on these boards. So why is it not populated on these boards? Was there something else done to account for the problems with the Alliance SRAMs? So the diodes no stuff? It almost looks like something was soldered to that and it's been taken off. So did you just stick it in the machine and think, oh, but it works fine without the diode, fuck that, we'll take the diode off all the boards? If I put the diode on, would it have worked? Of course, there's no dialogue going on between me and Candle now and Letharec to speak of. I never hear from these people for fucking months on end now. So it pains me to say it, but I can barely recommend this now because it's just regressed to such an extent that end users are having to, the thing boots straight to the memory test when I put it in the computer. I remember one of John's videos where he replaced the PLCC flash ROM and it worked. I'll do that. And you do that. And it works all of a sudden. You've already paid 88 fucking quid for the board. Why does the customer then have to go out and buy a flash ROM to put in the damn thing? So this customer bought this one to put in this machine. I put it in the machine. It doesn't work properly. And only by virtue of the fact that I've got 3 or 4 spare boards that I've kept in the space box for years on end, and I just selected one at random, stuck it in the machine, and all the problems went away. It seems to me this thing is just, it's going to end up going the same way as Side 3. The guy who sends a machine here, everything gets fitted into it, it all goes swimmingly and he gets it back. He has to essentially pay a surcharge to me so that I can account for the next job that comes in where everything's a total nightmare, it takes twice as long as expected, and I've got to do all kinds of stability fixes and tweaks just to get these things to work in the computer. And in this case, I failed to get this thing to work in the computer and I've just replaced it entirely. I'm going to keep this one, so I've swapped the black one for this one. I'm going to keep this one and I'm going to put it in other computers that I've got here and I'm going to see what's going on with it. I imagine it'll probably work fine in some other machine, but it didn't work fine in this one, and yet an older board did work fine in this one. Anyway, finally we've reached a conclusion with this computer. I'm going to pack it up now and I'm going to send it back. I did test it with a Side 3.0, an early revision Side 3 cartridge. It works absolutely perfectly with it. I'm not even going to bother testing it with Side 3.2 because it'll probably have an issue with it. And there's nothing I can do about it. There's no way I'm going to take this machine apart again and start fucking about with it, because I just absolutely had enough. I've invoiced the customer. He's perfectly happy that it's working. He's paid. I'm going to put it in a box, ship it back, and then we're going to get on with the next one. And hopefully the next one will be an easy one. But like I say, I pity the poor sod who attempts something like this without a vast array of spare parts, 16 years of experience. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I know for a fact that the client is very happy, and I've fingers crossed that he doesn't encounter another issue when he gets the machine back. So with that, I will once again thank you very much for watching. Thanks to everyone for their support, and all being well, I will see you in the next video, so bye-bye for now.